Welcome to Impractical Privacy. I'm Sudo. This week's episode covers a topic we've touched on in several episodes, but never like this. It deserves its own full episode. Picture this. It's December 2019, and you're living your life out in Oklahoma. It's the holidays. You're bouncing between celebrating Christmas and your daughter's birthday, completely surrounded by family, entirely present in the real world. Now, jump forward a year and a half. It's a normal day, and you're just trying to earn a living doing a DoorDash delivery. Your route takes you through a military base checkpoint. Standard stuff, right? Except this time, the guard tells you to step out of the vehicle. There's an outstanding felony warrant for your arrest. The charge? A sophisticated series of fraudulent bank withdrawals totaling thousands of dollars. The location? Maryland, a state you have never set foot in your entire life. Before you can even process the absurdity, the bureaucratic machine locks into place. You are extradited across state lines. You're put in an orange jumpsuit. And you spend a total of 6 grueling months in a Maryland jail cell for a crime you didn't commit. When the state finally realizes they screwed up and dropped the charges, there's no apology. There's no ride home. It's the dead of winter, and you're dumped on a sidewalk halfway across the country with no phone, no money, and a shattered life. This isn't some extreme worst-case threat model cooked up by paranoid privacy advocates in a forum. It's a real, documented nightmare. This is exactly what happened to a grandmother named Kimberly Williams. How does an innocent person get swallowed by the system like this? It didn't take a masterclass in old-school detective work. It took a lazy click of a button. A financial crimes investigator pulled grainy security footage of the actual suspect at a bank teller window. Instead of pounding the pavement, they posted a screenshot to an email listserv. Someone else ran that low-res image through a facial recognition algorithm. The software churned through millions of faces, calculated a statistical probability, and spit out a name. Kimberly Williams. And that was it. For the detectives, the case was closed. They didn't bother to check her ironclad alibi in Oklahoma. They didn't look at her geotagged social media footprints that proved she was thousands of miles away. They didn't check her financial records or interview people who actually knew her. They just held up a grainy security photo next to her driver's license, decided they looked close enough, and let the computer algorithm dictate probable cause. Kimberly Williams was the 14th person known to be wrongfully arrested in the United States because law enforcement treated an algorithmic guess as an absolute truth. And remember, that's just the number of people who had the resources and the stamina to fight back and get their stories made public. The actual number is likely much higher. Today on the show, we're looking at the ultimate real-world consequence of a broken digital infrastructure. We're going to peel back the layers on the myth of the human oversight, the confirmation bias as a service, and the death of due process. Because if a piece of unverified software can confidently brand you as a felon in a state you've never visited, your actual physical location doesn't protect you anymore. Grab a drink, secure your endpoints, and let's get into it. When I'm out, walking around the city I live in, I spend a lot of time looking up. I'm looking at cameras, license plate readers, the intersections, the storefronts, even the traffic poles. They all have cameras. And I think about where all that glass is pointing. Every single one of those lenses is an intake valve. They are feeding a massive, hungry digital pipeline. They harvest the raw data that fuels the exact black box systems we're discussing today. Your face is scanned, vectorized, and stored, just waiting for a flawed algorithm to look for a match. Now, if you confront the proponents of this tech, the vendors and the law enforcement, they love to pull out a classic defense. They argue that the software isn't the problem. Instead, they point to a strict police department policy as proof that everything is under control. It has become industry standard for software companies to slap a literal warning label on these search results. It's the digital equivalent of the warning on a pack of cigarettes. The policy usually states in bold letters, "This match is strictly an investigative lead. It does not constitute a positive identification." Even the International Association of Chiefs of Police explicitly caution its members that a facial recognition result is merely a clue. It's a starting point, not a finish line. It must be independently corroborated before a suspect can be formally identified or arrested. It sounds incredibly reasonable on paper, doesn't it? But out in the field, where policy meets human nature, these boilerplate warnings are a complete joke. The harsh reality is that busy, overworked, or undertrained investigators are repeatedly ignoring or simply not understanding these warnings. They treat a statistical guess by a computer as an absolute divine truth. Take a look at how this plays out in the real world. In Louisiana, police officers used an incorrect match from Clearview AI as the sole probable cause to secure an arrest warrant. Because of that lazy digital rubber stamp, Randall Caron Reed, a completely innocent Georgia resident, was pulled over, handcuffed, and thrown into a jail cell for nearly a week for a crime in Louisiana he physically couldn't have committed. And then in Indiana, a detective confidently marched into a judge's chambers and obtained an arrest warrant based entirely on his sworn assertion that he used software to positively identify a suspect. He conducted exactly 0 confirmatory investigation. No interviews, no alibi checks, no physical evidence. The machine said yes. So the detective said, "Book him." But it actually gets much worse. Even when a detective thinks they are following the rules and trying to corroborate the software's lead, their methods often compound the unreliability of the AI. Think about how facial recognition works. It doesn't find a single perfect match. It generates a gallery of faces that share statistical similarities with the suspect's photo. That means, by design, almost the entire list consists of false positives. People who just happen to have a similar bone structure or eye spacing. When an officer takes one of those false AI-generated matches and drops it into a photographic lineup, they aren't conducting a fair test. They're loading the deck. Here's the cognitive trap that trips everyone up. The setup. The lineup consists of the false AI match and 5 random filler mugshots of people who look vaguely similar. The flaw. Because the AI match was mathematically selected by a computer to resemble the actual criminal, the innocent person is going to look significantly more like the suspect than any of the random fillers do. And the result, when you show that lineup to a stressed, traumatized eyewitness, their brain naturally searches for the closest approximation. They point to the false match. The detective stands back, crosses their arms, and says, "See? The witness picked the same person the computer did. That lead is good." Except it's a total illusion. It's a closed feedback loop of confirmation bias. The algorithm makes a bad guess. The human witness rubber stamps it because of the flawed lineup design, and the system swallows another innocent life. The warning label didn't save them. It just gave the department legal cover when everything went sideways. When you boil it all down, what we are looking at is a continuation of a convenience tax, a shortcut for law enforcement to close cases faster. But we have to look closely at who exactly is bearing the brunt of that tax. Who pays the price when a detective decides a computer's guess is good enough? The tech industry loves to talk about optimization, but this technology is fundamentally, structurally broken. We have mountains of data proving it. A landmark 2019 study by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, a federal agency, evaluated the leading facial recognition algorithms. What they found wasn't a minor rounding error. They documented that Asian and African American faces were misidentified at rates 10 to 100 times higher than Caucasian faces. The software also produces significantly higher false matches for women, younger demographics, and the elderly. If you are not a white male, the machine is mathematically predisposed to misread your face. Given those metrics, what happens next shouldn't surprise anyone. Nearly every single one of the known, documented wrongful arrests caused by facial recognition in the United States has involved a black person. Let's put some actual names and stories to those statistics, because these aren't abstract data points. These are stolen hours, ruined reputations, and sheer terror. Najir Parks from New Jersey. He spent 10 agonizing days in a jail cell and was forced to bleed thousands of dollars in legal fees. The accusation? Shoplifting and attempting to hit a police officer with a car. The reality? Najir was sitting in a room 30 miles away when the crime went down. But a computer looked at a fake ID used by the real suspect, matched it to Najir, and the police stopped asking questions. Robert Williams from Michigan. He was arrested in his own driveway, in front of his wife and daughters, and forced to spend 30 hours in a crowded detention center. Why? Because an algorithm looked at a blurry security camera image of a man stealing watches and decided Robert was the guy. When detectives finally held up the grainy photo next to Robert's face during interrogation, even they had to admit, I guess the computer got it wrong. But only after the trauma was done. What makes these cases utterly infuriating is the human beings operating the system have to actively blindfold themselves to force the match. They ignore glaring, undeniable physical discrepancies just to satisfy the machine's output. Michael Oliver matched a blurry photo of a theft suspect. The suspect had zero body art. Michael, a full tattoo sleeve on both arms. Portia Woodruff matched a violent carjacking suspect. 6 Detroit police officers showed up at her door and handcuffed her while she was 8 months pregnant. A physical state the carjacker was clearly not in. Travis Williams matched a target on a retail theft warrant. Travis was 8 inches taller and 70 pounds heavier than the actual criminal. Think about the psychological gymnastics required here. An officer looks at a screen, sees a face that vaguely resembles a pixelated screenshot. An immediate psychological lock-in occurs. In cognitive science, this is known as automation bias. The human tendency to trust the output of an automated system even when it contradicts common sense or clear visual evidence right in front of your eyes. Once that bias hardens, standard investigative police work dies. They don't wait for DNA. They don't analyze fingerprints. They don't pull cellular tower dumps. And they certainly don't check to see if the human being standing in front of them was even in the same zip code when the crime occurred. The machine said it was them, so as far as the state is concerned, reality has to bend to match the software. All right, deep breath. Usually, in this segment, I tell you to adjust a setting, use an alias, or set up a pre-boot pin. But you can't sandbox a police department. You cannot encrypt your physical face. So how do we practice technical self-defense when the threat model is the state's algorithm? Over the last several months of running this podcast, we've focused heavily on controlling our own infrastructure. But this requires a different approach. Number one, we need to demand strict legislative bans. Because police have repeatedly proven that they are unable or unwilling to use this technology responsibly. The only effective mitigation is a complete ban. More than 20 jurisdictions across the country, including Boston, San Francisco, and Pittsburgh, have already barred police from using this tech. This is where local advocacy matters. Get involved with your city council. Demand that your local PD be stripped of the ability to use live or retroactive facial recognition. Number two, audit your local department. Use Freedom of Information Act or open records requests. Find out if your local police department contracts with Clearview AI or similar vendors. You can't fight a surveillance apparatus if you don't know it's there. Number three, disrupt the surveillance network. This goes back to the home lab and the open source community ethos. Contribute to projects like OpenStreetMap. Document where the automated license plate readers are. Log where the cameras and the surveillance nodes are located in your city. By mapping the infrastructure, you create public awareness of the dragnet. Up next, physical obfuscation, where legal. During protests or in highly surveilled areas, understand how the cameras work. Sunglasses, hats, and N95 masks drastically reduce the confidence scores of these algorithms by obscuring the geometric anchor points of your face. This week, your mission isn't on a keyboard. I want you to research your local municipality's stance on facial recognition technology. Find out if your city has a ban in place. If they don't, I want you to find the name of your city council representative. We can secure our servers with Docker and Caddy all day long. But if a flawed algorithm can pull your face from a digital lineup and send a SWAT team to your front door, your digital hygiene won't save you. Kimberly Williams will never get those 6 months of her life back. She lost her job, and she still lives with the anxiety that a computer might randomly flag her again for a crime she knows nothing about. Technology is supposed to be a tool, not an oracle. And right now, we're allowing law enforcement to treat a highly flawed, structurally biased beta test as gospel. If you value these deep dives into the impractical side of sovereignty, consider supporting the show on Patreon or with cryptocurrency on impracticalprivacy.com. And as always, you can listen directly at impracticalprivacy.com to skip the tracking telemetry. I'm Sudo, and this has been Impractical Privacy. Stay skeptical, stay safe, and never trust an algorithm to do a detective's job.